From its majestic monuments to its complex religious beliefs, ancient Egypt continues to fascinate the modern world. But behind the impressive pyramids and enigmatic sphinxes, there are dark and often repulsive secrets that challenge our understanding of this iconic civilization. Today, we dive into the depths of Egyptian history to uncover practices and customs that are not only surprising but also reveal an unsettling side of life along the Nile. Get ready to explore the most grotesque and fascinating aspects of life in ancient Egypt, where the obsession with purity and immortality was accompanied by rituals and customs that will leave you breathless. If this is your first time on the channel, subscribe now so you don't miss any important content about the darkest chapters of our history. The rear shepherd Henry Reich, the first Count of Holland and close friend of King Charles I of England, Scotland and Ireland, held a peculiar and crucial position during the Middle Ages. The Groom of the Stool. This title, despite its modest appearance, involved a significant responsibility: maintaining the king's hygiene. The Groom of the Stool had to assist the monarch with his most intimate needs, performing cleaning tasks that, although unglamorous, were essential. However, this responsibility was not a medieval invention. It dates back to much earlier times. In ancient Egypt, there was a similar position, though with an even more delicate function. The Iri or shepherd of the royal anus was a physician specialized in the care of the pharaoh's rear end. Pharaohs were considered gods, and as such, required rigorous medical attention. The title shepherd of the royal anus or Niru Pe Hut was not just an elegant way to describe a proctologist. The job involved administering enemas to the pharaoh, a practice that was common and accepted even among the general population in Egypt. Enemas and royal hygiene of the rear end was an important concern in ancient Egypt. Enemas were not only a measure of hygiene but were also considered a form of divine intervention. Herodotus and Diodorus of Sicily, Greek historians, documented the importance of enemas in everyday Egyptian life. The use of enemas was linked to the belief in the need to remove corrupt substances from the body to prevent illness. The figure of the shepherd of the royal anus had an almost sacred function, touching the pharaoh in the most intimate way possible. A well-known shepherd of the anus was a physician named Iranche, who lived around 2200 BCE. His medical titles were discovered on a recycled door found in the tomb of Giza. In addition to his specialization in rear-end care, Egyptian physicians also handled abdominal and eye problems. The rear end was considered a crucial part of Egyptian medicine due to the belief that it was the origin of a corrupt substance called wekadu, which needed to be eliminated to cure illnesses. Pregnancy tests in ancient Egypt were quite innovative for their time. Women carried 2 bags of seeds, one of barley and the other of wheat. It was believed that if the seeds sprouted after urinating on them, it was a sign of pregnancy. This method, though rudimentary, had a scientific basis. In 1963, the National Institutes of Health conducted a study and found that the Egyptian method was effective in 70% of cases. The Egyptians also believed that the type of seed that sprouted would indicate the baby's gender. If the barley sprouted first, it meant it would be a boy. If the wheat sprouted, it meant it would be a girl. While modern studies have found no correlation between the type of seed and the baby's gender, this method reflects the creativity and ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians. Another Egyptian method for determining pregnancy involved placing the woman in a mixture of beer and dates and observing how much she vomited. They also used more invasive methods, such as rubbing oils on the woman's body and examining her the following day, or inserting a clove of garlic or onion into her vagina and checking if the smell could be detected on her breath. These methods reflect a limited understanding of biology, but a strong belief in the connection between the body and pregnancy tests. Of course, here's a more detailed version of the last 3 sections. Harassment in ancient Egypt. Although ancient Egypt is known for its advances in various fields such as medicine and writing, it was not free from serious social problems. Egyptian women enjoyed legal rights that, in many cases, were superior to those of their contemporaries in other ancient cultures. They could work, own land, and even divorce. However, socially, women still faced a considerable amount of harassment and discrimination. During religious festivals, it was common for men to behave inappropriately, exposing their genitals and mocking women. This behavior often took place on the banks of the Nile, as men navigated boats, creating a public humiliation for the women present. Herodotus, the famous Greek historian, documented these events in his writings, reflecting a culture where harassment was not only tolerated but also considered an accepted part of the festivities. In addition to public harassment, women also faced mistreatment and little legal support in cases of violence and harassment. Victims of assaults were often blamed for the abuse they suffered, a problem exacerbated during the Ptolemaic dynasty. Despite legal equality, the everyday reality for many women included derogatory attitudes and a lack of effective protection against abuse. The witness torture program. Ancient Egypt had a rather brutal way of handling justice, especially when it came to witnesses and informants. During the reign of Ramses III, after the failed plot to assassinate him, an extremely severe punitive system was implemented. All palace employees, regardless of their knowledge of the plot, were sentenced to mutilation of their ears as punishment for not alerting authorities about the conspiracy. This policy aimed to deter others from failing to report suspicious activities, creating a climate of fear that encouraged denunciation. The methods of torture during investigations were equally ruthless. Interrogations often began with the subject being tied to a post and beaten on their hands and feet until they provided answers. The suspect's friends and family could also be subjected to torture to obtain additional information. The brutality of these methods sometimes led to false confessions, as individuals preferred to admit to crimes they had not committed in order to stop the suffering. Although the guards were aware of this risk, violence and terror were the main tools used to obtain confessions and ensure cooperation. As for witnesses, there were no formal oaths. Instead, they were asked to describe in detail how they would like to be punished if they lied. This psychological approach was meant to instill fear and ensure the truthfulness of their testimonies by making them aware of the punishment that awaited them. The mummification industry. Mummification in ancient Egypt was a complex and costly process, reflecting the deep concern for the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that preserving the body was crucial for ensuring eternal life and, therefore, they devoted themselves to preparing elaborate funeral rituals. During the 1st century BCE, the cost of a high-quality mummification was equivalent to a ton of silver, an exorbitant price that only the wealthiest could afford. This cost included materials such as linen, natron, a mixture of salts, resins, and incense, as well as the specialized work of embalmers. The mummification of the time, with its detailed elaboration, would have cost about $70,000 in modern money, including the costs of materials and labor. For the lower social classes, access to full mummification was out of reach. The poor often opted for simpler methods, such as wrapping the body in cloth and burying it in the desert sand to allow it to naturally desiccate. Instead of ornate tombs filled with sacred inscriptions, these bodies were buried in anonymous tombs without luxury. In our quest to understand the past, we sometimes come across aspects of history that challenge our morality and imagination. In the end, ancient Egypt not only offers us a glimpse into one of the most fascinating civilizations in history, but also a lesson about the complexity of humanity and culture's ability to blend the sublime with the horrific. If you've made it this far and learned something new with our stories, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next videos. Together, we can uncover and remember the truths that history often tries to hide.